Tony, what about this Kentucky team coming in here tomorrow?
Obviously a good club. I mean, #1 in the country if you're going to go off RPI standards, which obviously carries a lot of weight. So, again, first in the country in that category, and therefore in our league too. A team that'll have some familiar faces, but just like every year in our league with the draft and everything else, a lot of turnover, so some new faces too. But on offense, they like to bunt, like to run, and a pitching staff that's well coached as well.
Tony, y'all have hit 100 home runs for 2 years in a row now, and it's only been done once before you got here. What's been the key for the power surge for you guys, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know. I think prior to that, we were real close to that number because I think Coach Elander was bothered by it. But at the end of the day, the stat you'd like to have more than anything is a win. And when you're able to drive the ball for extra base hits, whether they be home runs or just doubles or triples, you put yourself in a good position. And I think our ballpark has been friendly to us, as has other places. And the combination of said Coach Elander getting guys to swing the bat in the cage the way that he used to, and then Coach Q in the weight room is a pretty good combo. And of course, just like everybody in the country, you're trying to coach good athletes too. We've been blessed with some guys that, have done well here. And as you see, the group in pro ball on the mound and at the plate is doing really well right now. It's fun to watch those guys in addition to trying to see who the next wave of those guys will be.
Is there any one particular thing Q has implemented in the weight room or out here on the field to maybe help in that department?
I don't think, first of all, I stay out of his way. I mean, the first year there, I liked being in there and kind of walking on the treadmill or just kind of killing time in there to see how the guys handle their business. I mean, you can tell a lot by a guy how he goes about it with his routines, in particular in the weight room. And also just to get a feel for, what he was doing. But I'm outdated on all that stuff. So I stay out of his way. He's obviously been a big league coach. He's been a coach throughout the minor leagues. He played himself. So he's as experienced as anyone, and he's got his own little formula he uses. And the one thing that's cool about he and Coach Anderson, they're both arguably, well, not arguably, they are at the top. Now, if you want to put them in first place in their category in college baseball, that would probably be a heated debate. But they're both open to new ideas and learning about whether it's new technology or whatever it is. And they supplement with those things that they think are appropriate. But again, he's got his own system that's worked at all levels and it's certainly worked for us.
Tony, Kentucky feels like they've thrown a different Friday night guy each of the last kind of 4 or 5 weeks. How difficult is it to prepare for that?
Yeah, well, I think they formally announced that Smith will throw, who threw for them, and then if I'm not mistaken, the outing before that was on a Tuesday against Louisville, who's an SEC quality baseball program. So even though he's a redshirt freshman, if I'm not mistaken, he's got experience. He kind of knows what's going on, and he's a competitor. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the ball on Friday. So you take a look at who you're facing, and as those guys, those new guys, those first-year guys play more and more, you get a little more data, you get a little more analytics, and it does probably actually sway a little easier to prepare. Now, once the game starts, you just play ball, and again, for us, we want to know who the opponent is, but ultimately, with this team in particular, we're looking just to play our best baseball, our best version of ourselves out there.
Since Andrew Lindsay started starting on Friday nights, how have you seen his confidence grow, and do you anticipate that he'll be in that position through the remainder of the regular season starting on Fridays?
The cool thing about him, and I think also his teammates, because of how he goes about his business and how he competes and his personality, I think he's always been confident, and I think the guys have always been confident in him. And because we're going to shake some things up for a variety of reasons, the guys didn't bat an eye. They liked that he was going to get the ball. I think where some things have increased, and maybe confidence in our ability to leave him out there for a longer period of time, pitch count and things like that, and just kind of having a feel for how the game's going to go when he's out there for 5+ innings. Now that he's kind of settled in as a true starter, I think there's a greater sense of comfort there and understanding. But regardless of how it goes, a lot of our guys have attributes that we trust and know are going to be there no matter what the scoreboard says. And his teammates like playing behind him, and he's going to compete.
Seems like the last few weeks at DHL kind of got into rhythm with Griffin against lefties, Dillon against righties. Just with KT being back, how does that kind of change that dynamic?
Yeah, I think KT is, still kind of, getting back to it. So there's a little bit of asterisk as it relates to him being out there for us. But Griffin is one of the older, more experienced, more successful hitters in the country. And then Dylan Dreiling is one of the more up and coming talented hitters you have. It's nice that one's right, one's left, so you can kind of mix and match a little bit. But the bottom line is we've gone with what we think is our best defense going into the weekends, and then try and find a way to get those two guys, in the lineup, or, to give us a chance to produce offensively, which they seem to do more than not before the game is over. Now, KT gave us a nice little spark when he was playing, so it'll be interesting how we, get him back in the mix. Tuesday's start was just to get some reps under his belt, so it didn't feel like he was going from 0 to 60. But we'll have to see how he gets mixed in, and certainly being a left-handed pinch hitter is a good option.
Kind of reference this, but what's it like seeing some of that success that guys from the last 2 years have had in the minors so far, from Gilbert to Hunley to Cheese and everyone else?
Yeah, it's fun. As a coach or even a person, if you just help somebody out and then it goes their way, you immediately want to pat yourself on the back, whether it's internally or externally. But it just makes you feel good. It makes you feel like you did the right things to help them prepare for pro ball, and that is one of our setups. I mean, guys do it differently. One way we coach our guys is we want them to be empowered to coach themselves when they're done here, regardless of what those circumstances are that they go on to. And I feel like even guys who haven't gotten a lot of action or didn't go, well, just say guys that have transferred that communicate with us, or guys that enter pro ball, they feel like this place better prepared them for whatever the next thing is. And so sorry for the recruiting blur, but that's the front end of it. But then the other thing is, those successful people are usually successful people for a reason. Those are really good dudes and really good competitors that are lumped into that group, so they're easy to cheer for. And so I find myself maybe checking up on the recent groups more than any guys I've ever coached before. And that's, obviously I like Coach Elander, but I don't know. There's just something about some of the guys that have paved the way here. You're looking at 3 decks now in the stadium. All those guys, and some guys that are done with pro ball or didn't make it. Pete Durkee, they helped build that deal. So there's a close knit there, if that makes sense.
Kentucky runs as well as anybody in the league. Just what do you all need to do better to slow down the run game?
Yeah, I think it's circumstantial. Now, on the whole, it's a topic that you bring up for good reason, but I think it's circumstantial. What's going on with the score, who's up at the plate, who do we have on the mound, what the count is, and those things like that. But you want to know who is on the bases, and then, you want to approach it with a variety of looks, going over that way. And we've talked about it and done some stuff to prepare. And then, ultimately, you look at, I think it was against Austin Peay when they reviewed the play at second. Simo had a really good tag. And then Zane Denton had a play. They reviewed it at third when we were at Georgia, but he had a really good tag on a play around the base. So kind of being strong around the base and making sure you're doing a good job on the receiving end to catch is very, very important, because whoever's back there, that's all we want them to do is just play catch. If you got to be Superman and come out of there and break your world record for pop time to second or to third, then it wasn't meant to be to get the guy out anyway. So if we play catch and do a good job on the receiving end, then that to me is success. Whether the guy's out or safe, we'll leave that up to the umpires.
With this being the last regular season home weekend, what would you want the fans to know about what their support has meant to you guys through the ups and downs the season has brought?
Yeah, I think all you have to do is look at it. When things kind of went our way, it could have been easy for there to be fair weather fans after a loss to Tennessee Tech, and instead it seems like the season, the fan base has been growing. And you actually look back to February, we might have had one of our best weekends prior to even getting into what is called the spring. So the weather hasn't been perfect. It seems like it's been better when we're on the road here in Knoxville. But usually it's the better the weather that gets and the better you play, the better the crowds get. Our crowds have just increasingly gotten better and more intense as the season goes on. So they've helped us right the ship or gain momentum or get stronger as the season's going. And then I would expect for the final weekend to be a little bit rowdy. I mean, as they said, days of confused, school's out for summer.
Tony, heading down the stretch here, how important is it to hold serve at home here this week?
Yeah, I think it's the game that's in front of you. Again, this team's got its own theme. This season's kind of written part of its story to this point. And all you got to do is look at the wackiness that took place on Tuesday night here with our midweek game for a reference point of what's the next thing in front of you. And our guys will be out here shortly. It'll be a lighter practice with finals and a Friday series awaiting us, 3 long days. But just what's the thing in front of you? And we probably had the best coach in the country talk about be where your feet are in Pat Summitt. So I would listen to her before I'd listen to me if I was one of our players. So there you go.